This book is not about tricking or controlling others. It is about seeing clearly and protecting yourself. Velistra. The Forbidden Book is a map of what happens beneath the surface of smiles, compliments, and helpful advice. Every day, invisible influence surrounds us. A targeted ad that nudges your choice, a flattering comment with an unspoken expectation, a limited time offer, or a comparison designed to make one option seem perfect. Some of this influence is honest. Some slowly becomes a quiet trap. Your task is to notice the strings before they tighten. That is what Velistra teaches. Think of influence as psychological engineering. It has three parts: motive, why; method, how; and context, where. This is the Velistra Triangle. When the motive is control, the method hides truth, and the context is rushed or confusing. You are being manipulated. Ethical influence is different. It respects your awareness, gives you space to think, and is honest about facts. It welcomes your right to say no. This line between dark and fair influence guides every chapter of this book. You may read this book for two reasons. First, to protect yourself, your relationships, and your work from hidden pressure. Second, to understand influence so you can communicate clearly, negotiate fairly, and stay firm, without being used or using others. In both cases, you will find plain language, vivid examples, and short exercises that turn awareness into a habit. Velistra won't give you tricks to dominate. It will give you tools to notice. How to spot the first number that bends your choice. How to slow down when urgency is faked. How to recognize compliments with hidden costs. And how to steady your emotions when someone plays hot-cold games with your attention. Real power begins with calm. Calm is not weakness. It is the space where details become clear. Together we'll build a small, practical shield. Brief pauses before big decisions, quick questions that force clarity, a simple log to track triggers, and polite phrases that allow you to say no without conflict. You'll practice checking evidence instead of following the crowd, separating real expertise from shiny titles, and discerning true desire from the fear of losing what you already invested. This book values respect over shortcuts. Ethics are a strategy, not decoration. Trust is capital. Clarity saves you from costly mistakes. Honest communication produces cooperation that cannot be faked. Yes, we will explore common manipulative techniques, but also clean influence, how to set fair frames, handle disagreements without emotional blackmail, and offer value so others choose openly, not under pressure. Read in order or jump to what matters most. Now, if countdowns and deadlines push you around, focus on scarcity and urgency. If gifts make you feel indebted, start with reciprocity. If you want to be firm without being rude, check framing, BATNA, and graceful exits. Before we begin, set your intention. This book is not a mask to control others. It is a mirror to see yourself and the world more clearly. Use these tools as a shield and compass, and you gain quiet strength, freedom to choose, and lasting respect. Use them to take away choice, and you risk your reputation, relationships, and honesty. Across these pages, we move from one simple question, what is happening to me right now, to a strong answer. I see the game and I choose. Choosing with clear eyes protects you and elevates the standard around you. In this way, Velistra becomes more than a title. It becomes a daily habit, the habit of awareness, clarity, and responsibility. We will not scare you with darkness. We will light it just enough so you can find your way. Welcome. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Invisible Influence. The world behind the curtain. The world you inhabit, the one you touch and taste and feel, is merely the stage. It is the world behind the curtain that truly holds the strings. Every day, from the moment you wake to the silence you keep before sleep, you are engaged in a constant, silent dance of influence. The advertisement that doesn't just sell you a car, but sells you a version of yourself, more successful, more free. The gentle pressure from a loved one, a single raised eyebrow that shifts your entire opinion on a matter you thought was settled. The political slogan that resonates not with your logic, but with a deep, unspoken fear. This is the architecture of reality, the invisible latticework upon which your choices are hung. Most of this influence is neutral, a necessary current for the river of human interaction to flow. A teacher honestly guiding a student, a friend offering a genuine recommendation. This is the influence that builds and connects, the honest current that seeks to illuminate. It is a whisper that masquerades as your own thought. It is the slow, deliberate turning of a key in a lock you didn't know existed. This is manipulative influence, and its goal is not to create, but to control, not to empower, but to harvest. It feeds on your inattention, building its home in the space between your conscious thoughts. And the most profound truth you must accept is that you are, by your very nature, persuadable. This is not a weakness to be ashamed of, but a fundamental aspect of your humanity. You are a social creature, wired for connection and consensus. Your brain, a magnificent and ancient machine, is built to take shortcuts, to rely on patterns and social cues for survival. You are designed to be influenced because, for millennia, fitting in and following the tribe meant the difference between life and death. This is the biological trapdoor through which manipulation enters. The manipulator understands this ancient programming. They speak to the part of you that yearns to belong, that fears being cast out, that craves the safety of agreement. They use the weight of social proof, the allure of scarcity, the automatic response to authority, not as tools for shared understanding, but as levers to be pulled. This is the psychological trap, a snare laid not in the forest, but in the pathways of your own mind. It feels like certainty, it feels like your own idea, and that is its perfect, terrible disguise. But there is a key, a single, profound shift that can begin to dissolve these invisible binds. That key is awareness. Awareness is the light you shine into the world behind the curtain. It is the simple yet revolutionary act of pausing in the face of a compelling feeling and asking, where did this come from? It is the quiet questioning of a sudden urgency, the examination of a rising anger, the curiosity about why a particular face feels so trustworthy. When you cultivate this awareness, you are no longer just a passenger in your own mind. You begin to see the strings not as fate, but as mechanics. You start to notice the rhythm of the persuasion, the subtle repetition, the emotional triggers being deployed. The trap, once seen, loses its power. The whisper, once identified as coming from outside, can no longer pretend to be your own inner voice. This is the first and most essential step on the path laid out in the forbidden pages of Velistra. It is not about building walls of cynicism or rejecting all influence, for that is to reject life itself. It is about developing a finer sense of touch, a deeper quality of listening. It is about learning to discern the honest handshake from the velvet glove, and understanding the immense, untapped power that comes from knowing the difference. The curtain once drawn can never be closed again. Chapter 2. The Velistra Triangle, a new lens of analysis. To see the invisible, you must first know where to look. The most dangerous deceptions are not hidden in shadows, but in plain sight, disguised by the blinding light of the ordinary. When you feel the subtle pull of another's will, whether in a boardroom or a whispered conversation, the experience can feel overwhelming, a chaotic storm of emotion and pressure. But every storm has a structure, a predictable architecture. The Velistra Triangle provides this structure, a simple yet profound lens that brings the blurred lines of influence into sharp, immediate focus. It asks three fundamental questions that, when answered, reveal the entire play. First, you must discern the motive. Why is this influence being applied? Is it rooted in a genuine desire for a mutual benefit, a shared success, an honest exchange? Or does it stem from a place of lack within the influencer? A hunger for power, a need for control, a void of validation that they seek to fill through you? The motive is the engine. It is the initial spark that sets everything in motion, and its purity or its corruption stains every action that follows. Once you begin to look for the motive behind the words, you start to hear a second, quieter conversation happening beneath the first. This leads you to the second point of the triangle, the method. These are the tools and tactics, the specific instruments used to channel the motive into a tangible effect on you. It could be the calculated use of flattery, a currency spent to lower your defenses. It might be the strategic omission of a key piece of information, creating a reality that serves only one party. It could be the provocation of a specific emotion, like fear or guilt, because a mind in distress is far more pliable than a mind at peace. The methods are endless, a vast and nuanced arsenal, but they are never accidental. They are the deliberate choices made to navigate you toward a predetermined destination. Yet, a method alone is meaningless. A shouted command in an empty room has no power. This is where the third, and most often overlooked, point completes the triangle. The context. This is the when and the where. It is the specific environment, both physical and psychological, that makes you vulnerable to the method. The context is the fertile ground in which the seed of influence is planted. A private, stressful moment after a long day. A public setting where social pressure is high. A period of personal uncertainty when your usual defenses are down. The manipulator is a master of context, instinctively knowing that the right words spoken in the wrong setting are useless, but the right words in the perfect setting are irresistible. When you train yourself to analyze any moment of influence through this tripartite lens, something remarkable happens. The fog of confusion lifts. You are no longer a participant lost in the drama, but an observer in the control room. You see the motive, perhaps a need to dominate, feeding the method, a relentless undermining of your confidence. Within the perfect context, a moment when you desperately need support. The 3 points connect, and the hidden structure of the interaction is illuminated in an instant. This is not about complex analysis or paranoid suspicion. It is about a shift in perception. The Velistra Triangle does not give you the answers, but it gives you the only questions that matter. It is a compass for the human will, allowing you to navigate the complex social world not as a subject to its currents, but as a master of your own course. Once you see the triangle, you cannot unsee it, and in that seeing, you reclaim the territory of your own mind. Chapter 3. The line between ethical and dark influence. The most powerful forces in the human experience are never inherently good or evil. It is the intent behind them that paints the world in light or in shadow. Influence is no different. Every day, you are both a sculptor and being sculpted, and the tools you use or allow to be used on you define the quality of your reality. The line between ethical influence and its dark counterpart is not a vast legalistic chasm, but a subtle, intimate frontier within every interaction. It is a line drawn not in law, but in spirit. Ethical influence is built upon a foundation of 3 quiet pillars: respect for the other's autonomy, clarity of your own intention, and the preservation of their true choice. It is an open hand, offering a lantern to help another find their own path. It says, "Here is what I see, here is what I propose, but the decision to walk with me remains, as it must, entirely yours." This kind of influence seeks to build, to empower, to create a shared understanding that leaves both parties stronger and more aware. It is the teacher who inspires curiosity rather than demanding obedience, the leader who fosters genuine loyalty through trust, not fear. It is an invitation to a collaborative dance. Dark influence, however, is a solitary game. It operates in the opposite direction, systematically dismantling those very pillars. It cannot function where respect, clarity, and choice are present. So its primary purpose is to obscure them. It hides the truth, not necessarily with a blatant lie, but with a more insidious half-truth, a strategic omission, or an emotional narrative that leads you away from your own rational mind. It might use the language of care to mask control, or the banner of urgency to bypass your careful consideration. In a relationship, it is the side that says, "If you loved me, you wouldn't need to ask why." In business, it is the crafted limited-time offer that preys on your fear of missing out rather than appealing to the genuine value of the product. In your digital life, it is the algorithm that feeds you content designed to provoke outrage or insecurity, because an emotionally agitated mind is a suggestible mind. Dark influence does not want you to see clearly, because clarity is its kryptonite. It thrives in the fog. And this is the great, unspoken truth that the masters of manipulation often forget. Ethical persuasion is, in the long run, infinitely more powerful and resilient. Dark influence is like a sugar rush for the ego. It provides a swift and intoxicating hit of control, but it is metabolized quickly, leaving behind the bitter aftertaste of distrust and the brittle foundation of a relationship built on sand. When the manipulated person finally sees the light, the connection is severed, often forever. Ethical influence, however, is a slow, steady nourishment. It builds trust, fosters genuine loyalty, and creates structures that can withstand the storms of disagreement and time. A team led with transparency will innovate and adapt. A relationship built on mutual respect will deepen and endure. A brand that honestly serves its customers will create advocates, not just one-time buyers. The dark path offers a quick harvest, but it poisons the field. The ethical path cultivates the soil, ensuring a yield that can last a lifetime. The choice of which tool to use and which to allow to be used on you ultimately defines the architecture of your world. It is the difference between building a bridge with someone and building a cage for them. Chapter 4. Anchoring. The first number that bends your choices. The first number you hear is a ghost that will haunt every decision you make after. It silently builds a cage and then convinces you the walls are your own. Your mind, in its quest for efficiency, is desperate for a reference point. It clings to the first piece of information offered, the initial value, the opening gesture, like a sailor in a storm clinging to a single rock. This is the anchor. It is a cognitive, deep-seated instinct, a primitive shortcut, where your perception of everything that follows is filtered through and compared to that very first data point. In the world of commerce, this is the art of the first price. The luxury watch displayed for $20,000 makes the $5,000 model seem almost reasonable, a bargain whispered in the shadow of an extreme. The initial offer in a negotiation is not just a starting position. It is a psychological bomb designed to detonate in the center of the conversation, reshaping the entire landscape of what is possible. The other party is now fighting an uphill battle, not against you, but against the ghost of that first number you so confidently laid down. But this principle extends far beyond money, into the very fabric of your social and personal life. A carefully placed compliment, perhaps about your remarkable generosity, can serve as an anchor, making it far more difficult for you to later refuse a significant request. A critic's initial scathing review of a film can anchor your own experience, leading you to watch it through a lens of preordained disappointment, noticing only the flaws and missing the virtues. These anchors are so potent because they feel like our own thoughts, our own assessments. We believe we are arriving at a rational conclusion, unaware that our judgment is swimming in waters someone else has already defined. To break an anchor's control, you must first learn to feel its weight the moment it is dropped. It is that sudden, slight pull on your perception, the immediate sense of a scale being set. This awareness is the first and most crucial rupture in the spell. The moment you feel it, you must consciously question its origin. Ask yourself not, is this a good price, but why is this the number I am comparing everything to? Who chose this starting point, and for what purpose? This act of questioning is the beginning of freedom. To shatter the anchor, you must deliberately expand your frame of reference. Before accepting the scale you have been given, you must seek other measures. If a price is presented, actively research what others have paid elsewhere in a completely different context. If an opinion is offered as a definitive judgment, seek out 3 contrary viewpoints to create a balanced landscape in your mind. This is not cynicism. It is the practice of intellectual sovereignty. You can begin this recalibration with small daily drills. When you see a discounted item in a store, pause for a moment and ask what the original, now crossed-out price was meant to make you feel. In a conversation, notice when the first suggestion on the table seems to dictate the entire direction of the discussion. Observe how a single piece of feedback can alter your entire perception of your own work, but you are under no obligation to chain yourself to it. You can acknowledge its presence, understand its pull, and then choose to set sail for your own destination. Chapter 5. Urgency Illusions. The power of fake pressure. The most dangerous cage is one you willingly step into, believing the door is about to close forever. There is a specific and potent alchemy used to bypass your conscious mind, a formula that transforms your rational hesitation into impulsive action. It is the manufacturing of false time. This is the illusion of urgency, a psychological trigger that mimics the genuine pressure of a life or death situation for the most mundane of purposes. It is the countdown timer on a website for a product that will be restocked tomorrow. It is the whispered secret that you must act now, before someone else does. It is the emotional deadline in a relationship, the if you don't commit today, I'm gone ultimatum that leaves no space for reflection. These are scarcity traps, carefully designed to make you feel that the opportunity, the product, the love is vanishing before your eyes. Your ancient biology, wired to prioritize immediate loss over potential long-term gain, screams at you to act, to seize, to secure. This scream is so primal, so visceral, that it effortlessly drowns out the quieter, more rational voice of your prefrontal cortex. Urgency, whether real or fabricated, clouds judgment by initiating a subtle cognitive shutdown. It narrows your focus to the impending loss, making you myopic. You stop evaluating the quality of the offer, the truth of the statement, the sustainability of the relationship. Your mind, under this manufactured siege, is stripped of its ability to compare, to research, to ponder the long-term consequences. The only thing that matters is the ticking clock and the dreadful silence that will follow its final chime. In this state, you are not making a choice. You are executing a reflex. The manipulator understands that a mind under pressure does not choose wisely. It simply chooses to end the pressure. To disarm this illusion, you must learn the art of introducing a deliberate pause, a moment of stillness in the storm of now. This begins with a simple but profound grounding technique, the conscious reclamation of time. When you feel the heat of urgency, the quickening of your pulse at the sight of a limited offer, or a demanding ultimatum, you must physically stop. Take a single deep breath that is longer on the exhale than the inhale. This is not a metaphorical suggestion, but a physiological intervention. It signals to your nervous system that this is not, in fact, a predator chasing you. In that created space, you must then ask the liberating question: what happens if I wait? What happens if the timer runs out? What happens if I sleep on this decision? What happens if I say I need a day to think? You will find that in nearly all cases, the world does not end. The offer often returns in another form. The person making the demand reveals their true intentions through their reaction to your pause. This act of slowing down is not indecision. It is the ultimate assertion of power. It is you declaring that your time, your judgment, and your inner peace are not commodities to be traded under threat. The illusion of urgency can only exist in the territory you cede to it. Refuse to rush, and you watch the mirage of fake pressure dissolve into nothing at all. Chapter 6. Reciprocity. Gifts with hidden strings. There is no debt more binding than the one you feel you owe without ever having signed a contract. The smallest gift can be the key to the largest lock on your free will. This is the deep, ancient code of reciprocity, a social instinct woven into the very fabric of our species. It is the unconscious ledger every human heart keeps, the compelling urge to return a favor, to balance the scale. This instinct is the glue of functional societies, the foundation of trust and mutual aid. But in the shadows, this profound human decency is meticulously weaponized. The gift arrives long before the request. The unsolicited favor is performed with a quiet flourish. The overwhelming kindness is dispensed, not from a place of abundance, but from a place of calculation. This is the critical difference between generosity and leverage. True generosity is a closed loop. Its purpose is in the act of giving itself, expecting nothing in return. It is a gift with no string attached. Leverage, disguised as generosity, is an investment. It is the planting of a seed of indebtedness, carefully tended until it grows into a sense of obligation, strong enough to support the weight of a future demand. The manipulator is a master of creating this emotional debt. They understand that the currency is not the objective value of the gift, but the subjective weight of the obligation it creates. It could be the colleague who consistently brings you a coffee, creating a background hum of indebtedness until the day they ask you to cover for their significant mistake. It is the romantic partner who lavishes you with affection. After a conflict, not to heal, but to make a future disagreement feel like a betrayal of their kindness. It is the business that provides a surprising amount of free value, only to make the subsequent expensive subscription feel like a reasonable return for their initial generosity. The string is always there, thin and strong, waiting for the pull. To see it is to disarm it. The first defense is to recognize that a true gift asks for nothing, not even your gratitude. It is given freely. The transactional offering, however, often comes with a subtle pressure, a lingering glance that waits for acknowledgement, a tone that suggests you have been specially chosen for this benevolence. When you detect this, when you feel the invisible string being tied, your freedom lies in a simple but profound act. Refusing to feel indebted, you can receive the gift for what it is, a strategy, not a kindness. This allows you to respond with polite, detached gratitude, without the accompanying sense of a debt incurred. And when the eventual request arrives, the one that feels disproportionately large compared to the initial favor, you must be prepared to decline without guilt. Your script need not be confrontational. It need only be clear and weightless. A simple, "I appreciate your offer, but I won't be able to do that," is a complete sentence. You can soften it with a neutral acknowledgement. "I know you helped me with that earlier project, but this isn't something I can take on." The key is to avoid elaborate excuses, which are simply fuel for further negotiation. You are not refusing the person, You are refusing the transaction. You are cutting the string. In that moment, you reclaim your ledger. You step out of their carefully constructed economy of obligation and back into the freedom of your own choices, where every yes you give is truly your own. Chapter 7. The Praise Paradox. Compliments with a cost, the most elegant traps are baited not with fear, but with validation. A compliment is never just words. It is a key, and you must ask yourself what lock it is meant to open. We are by our very nature hungry to be seen, to be valued, to have our best qualities reflected back to us. This vulnerability is the canvas upon which the manipulator paints. They understand that flattery is not merely a social nicety. It is a potent currency, traded not for its face value, but for the influence it purchases. There is a profound and critical difference between positive feedback and strategic praise. Positive feedback is specific, honest, and given without an agenda. Its purpose is to encourage growth, to acknowledge a genuine achievement. It feels clean, a gift of pure observation. Strategic praise, however, is a tool. It is often vague, excessive, and targeted, not at your true strengths, but at your deepest insecurities. It is the art of telling you exactly what you most desperately want to hear about yourself. The person who feels overlooked will be drowned in recognition. The person who doubts their intelligence will be called a genius. This is not an accident. It is a calculated deposit into your psychological account, meant to create a balance of influence that can later be withdrawn. These friendly words carry hidden expectations, silent contracts, written in invisible ink, that only appear when the demand is made. The constant, effusive praise from a superior is not about your work. It is about making you endlessly loyal, overly willing to work late, and less likely to ask for a raise, for fear of shattering that perfect, flattering image they hold of you. The stream of compliments from a new romantic partner, so soon and so intense, is often not about love, but about acceleration, creating a debt of gratitude and a fear of loss that bypasses your natural caution. The praise is the sweetener that makes the eventual request, the coming criticism, or the subtle control palatable. To accept the praise is to implicitly accept the terms of the hidden contract. The way out of this paradox is not to become cynical, to reject all kindness, but to develop a finer discernment. You must learn to receive a compliment without immediately internalizing it, to hold it at a slight distance for examination. This is the practice of detaching emotion from evaluation. When praise arrives, pause. Do not let it instantly flood your system with gratitude and warmth. Instead, ask yourself a simple clinical question. What is the context of this remark? Is it following a specific, measurable action, or is it a general character assessment? Is it being given freely, or does it feel like it requires you to be a certain way to keep it? By separating the emotional payload from the words themselves, you neutralize the hidden string. You can accept the words with a simple, graceful thank you, without accepting the unspoken obligation. You learn to value the quiet, consistent respect of someone who sees you clearly over the dazzling, intermittent applause of someone who needs you to perform. In doing so, you reclaim your own internal metric of self-worth. You are no longer a prisoner of the praise you receive, and therefore, you become immune to the cost hidden within it. Chapter 8. Hot-cold influence. Emotional whiplash. The human nervous system will cling to a source of unpredictable warmth more desperately than it will to a constant, comfortable chill. To control someone, you need not punish them consistently. Only reward them inconsistently. This is the essence of hot-cold influence, a calculated orchestration of emotional whiplash, designed not to punish, but to disorient. It is the strategic application of inconsistency, where warmth and approval are abruptly withdrawn, and just as abruptly reinstated, for no reason you can clearly discern. Your mind, a magnificent machine built to find patterns and seek stability, is thrown into chaos. The ground beneath your sense of reality becomes unstable. This destabilization is the entire point. In the face of such confusion, your critical thinking begins to shut down. You are no longer evaluating the situation. You are desperately trying to navigate it, to find the secret pattern that will restore the warmth. You become hyper-vigilant, focused entirely on the source of the inconsistency, trying to earn back the approval that was so mysteriously taken away. We see this push-pull cycle enacted across the stages of human interaction. In dating, it is the intoxicating partner who is all attention and affection one week, then distant and unreachable the next, making you believe that the problem must lie with you, and that you must work harder to regain their initial, perfect attention. In sales, it is the salesperson who acts as your greatest ally, then reveals a limited-time opportunity, with such stern gravity that you feel you are disappointing them personally if you hesitate. In leadership, it is the manager who offers effusive public praise on Monday and then delivers a silent, freezing disapproval on Tuesday, keeping you perpetually off balance and eager to please. In each case, the goal is the same: to make you responsible for their emotional weather. You are so busy trying to predict the next storm or earn a glimpse of sun that you forget. You have the right to simply walk out of the climate altogether. To restore your internal balance, you must first recognize the red flags of this tactic in its early stages. The first sign is a feeling of walking on eggshells, a constant, low-grade anxiety about the other person's mood. The second is the inability to explain their behavior with any logical reason. The third and most telling is that your attempts to address the inconsistency are met with dismissal, gaslighting, or a sudden, warm shift that rewards you for dropping the subject. Once detected, the defense is not to play the game. You must refuse to chase the warmth. You do this by grounding yourself in your own consistent reality. When the coldness comes, do not frantically seek to understand it or fix it. Instead, turn your attention inward. Reconnect with your own values, your own stable sources of validation. Let the cold front pass without following it. By refusing to react, you withdraw the fuel for the entire mechanism. You declare that your emotional state is your own sovereign territory, not a puppet, to be jerked between extremes. You become the steady temperature in the room, and in that steadiness, the manipulator's hot and cold game is revealed for the empty, desperate tactic it always was. Chapter 9. The Power of Calm, Emotional Clarity in Chaos. In a world designed to trigger your emotions, the most radical and powerful act is to choose not to feel them on command. Your calmness is not a passive state, it is an active defense. The manipulator, the advertiser, the provocateur, they all operate on the same fundamental principle. They must create a ripple in your emotional water to distort your perception. Anger clouds judgment, fear narrows vision, and urgency creates a thrilling, dangerous myopia. In that state of agitation, you are not you. You are a collection of predictable reflexes. Therefore, the ultimate counter-influence is not a more clever argument, but an unassailable stillness. This calmness is not weakness, nor is it indifference. It is a profound strength, a position of immense power, because it returns the locus of control to where it has always belonged, inside you. It is the reclamation of your own inner climate. To understand this, you must first recognize that the chaos is not an accident. It is often the very tool being used against you. The heated argument, the rushed deadline, the manufactured crisis, all are designed to trigger your biological alarm system, to flood your body with chemicals that prepare you for a fight or a flight, but never for a clear, reasoned choice. The path to countering this begins with a biological and psychological grounding. It starts with the breath, not as a cliché, but as a physiological lever. A slow, deliberate breath signals the vagus nerve, which in turn tells your primal brain that the emergency is over. This is the foundation of the pause before reaction method. It is the conscious insertion of a single moment of silence between the stimulus and your response. When the provoking email arrives, you do not reply, you breathe. When the pressure is applied in a conversation, you do not engage, you become still. In that pause, you create a sanctuary of clarity. You step out of the emotional storm and into the observatory of your own mind. From this vantage point, you can see the mechanics of the influence attempt with stunning clarity. The attempt to anger you is revealed as a strategy to make you say something you will regret. The attempt to rush you is exposed as a tactic to prevent you from seeing the flaws in the offer. The attempt to guilt you is unmasked as a lever to make you comply out of a sense of obligation rather than desire. Your calmness acts as a revealer. It is a light shone on the stagecraft of manipulation. The manipulator, expecting a reaction, anger, fear, frantic agreement, finds nothing, but their tools become useless against the void of your stillness. They have nothing to push against. In the face of your calm, their chaotic performance appears exactly as it is, desperate, theatrical, and weak. This is how you expose manipulation instantly. You do not fight the chaos. You simply refuse to enter it. You remain in the deep, still water beneath the storm, watching the surface turmoil with detached understanding. And from that place of quiet power, your choices become truly your own again, reasoned, intentional, and free.
Chapter 10. Mental Triggers and the Personal Influence Log. The most important key you will ever hold is the one that fits the lock on your own mind. Everyone else who seeks to influence you already has a copy. It is time you studied the shape of it yourself. All the principles we have explored, the anchors, the urgency, the reciprocity, are external forces, but they are useless against a fortress without a gate. Their power depends entirely on the hidden vulnerabilities within you, the secret passageways into your judgment that you have, until now, left unguarded. True mastery, therefore, does not begin with recognizing the tactics of others, but with a deep and unflinching understanding of your own inner landscape. What are the words that make your chest tighten with pride or with insecurity? What specific situations make you feel small, desperate to prove yourself, or suddenly hungry for approval? These are your mental triggers, the precise pressure points that, when pressed, cause your rationality to collapse and your emotional reflexes to take command. A person who fears being seen as incompetent will crumble before a criticism wrapped in false concern. A person who craves being seen as a savior will leap at any opportunity to rescue someone, even from a problem they themselves created. To move from being a subject of these forces to becoming their cartographer, you must begin the practice of keeping a personal influence log. This is not a diary of events, but a forensic record of your internal weather. It is a quiet, private space where you track the moments you felt a strong, compelling emotion, a surge of obligation, a pang of unworthiness, a frantic need to acquire or to agree. In this log, you do not judge the feeling, you deconstruct it. You note what was said, by whom, and in what context. More importantly, you note what hidden string inside you was plucked. Was it your need to be liked, your fear of conflict, your desire to be perceived as intelligent or generous? Over time, as you faithfully record these moments, a profound shift occurs. You are no longer a passenger in these interactions. You become the observer in the laboratory of your own psyche. Patterns begin to emerge, not just in your own reactions, but in the people who influence you. You will see that a certain individual consistently uses a compliment to preface a significant request. You will notice that a particular environment always makes you more susceptible to impulsive decisions. This is how self-awareness transforms from a concept into a daily reflex. The act of logging itself trains your mind to pause and observe in the moment. The trigger is pulled, but instead of reacting, you find yourself making a mental note. Ah, there it is. The old feeling of being underestimated. I know this script. And in that moment of recognition, the trigger is disarmed. The emotional charge dissipates, replaced by the calm clarity of the observer. You begin to carry this map with you everywhere. You no longer walk into situations blind to your own wiring. You know where your hidden doors are, and in knowing them, you can choose whether or not to open them. This is the final, essential step. It is the difference between knowing the principles of influence intellectually and being truly fundamentally immune to its darker applications. You are no longer just reading the forbidden book. You have begun to write your own. Chapter 11. Quick questions that break manipulation. The most sophisticated locks are opened not with force, but with a simple, precise question. Manipulation depends on the silence of your inner voice. Your defense is to break that silence. When you are in the grip of a skilled influence, the world seems to narrow to a single, compelling path. Your thoughts become heavy, clouded by a sense of urgency, obligation, or doubt. In these moments, attempting a complex analysis is impossible. You are fighting the current with your bare hands. The solution is not to fight harder, but to ask smarter. There are short, incisive questions that act as psychological lever, capable of prying open the trap before it fully closes. The first and most immediate is this: what is happening to me right now? This is not a question about the external situation, but about your internal state. It forces a moment of metacognition, a splitting of consciousness, where one part of you, the aware self, observes the part that is reacting. Are you feeling a sudden, frantic pressure? A wave of guilt? An inexplicable need to please? Just by naming the sensation, you create a sliver of distance between you and the emotion. You are no longer the feeling, you are the one observing it. From this small foothold of awareness, you can ask the second, grounding question: what evidence do I have? The manipulative narrative is often built on a foundation of implied truths and emotional assumptions. This question demands that you look for the bricks. If you are being told that this is your only chance, where is the proof? If you are being made to feel that you owe a debt, where is the written contract? If you are being convinced that a certain outcome is inevitable, what tangible data supports that? You will often find that the evidence is sparse, made of feelings and fears rather than facts. This question shatters the illusion by forcing your rational mind, which was momentarily sidelined, back into the conversation. Finally, and most powerfully, you must ask the question that reclaims your autonomy. What happens if I say no? Play out the scenario to its end. Visualize the silence after your refusal. Picture the other person's reaction. What is the actual, tangible consequence? Not the consequence they are implying with their tone of disappointment or their hints at a missed opportunity, but the real-world result. You will discover that in the vast majority of cases, the consequence is not a catastrophe, but merely an uncomfortable moment, a shift in a dynamic, or the simple closing of a door you may not have wanted to walk through anyway. This question exposes the bluff. It reveals that the power you have assigned to the other person is, in fact, your own power, currently on loan to them through your fear. These three questions together: what is happening to me? What is the evidence? What if I say no? Form a rapid response system for the mind. They are not a lengthy analysis. They are a swift internal triage that creates instant clarity. They are the quiet voice that speaks in the space between the stimulus and your response, ensuring that your next move is yours and yours alone. Chapter 12. Saying no without creating conflict. The most powerful word in the universe of influence is also the smallest. It requires no explanation, owes no debt, and when spoken from a place of calm, it becomes an unmovable object. So many of the conflicts we fear are not conflicts of action, but conflicts of expectation. We are terrified of the disappointment, the shifted gaze, the silent judgment that we imagine will follow a refusal. This fear is the very lubricant that allows manipulation to operate smoothly.
To say no with grace is not about avoiding conflict, but about redefining it. It is about understanding that a true boundary is not a wall built from anger, but a line drawn with respect for yourself and for the other person's ability to handle your truth. The psychology of a boundary is not about keeping others out. It is about defining the space where you truly reside. A manipulator, however, does not seek a relationship with you. They seek a relationship with your compliance. Therefore, your no is not a rejection of them as a person, but a rejection of their proposed transaction. The architecture of this refusal is built on simplicity and neutrality. The most effective scripts are polite, firm, and remarkably uninteresting. They are delivered not with a shout, but with the quiet finality of a fact. Thank you for thinking of me, but I won't be able to participate. I understand your position, but my decision is final. I appreciate the offer, but it doesn't align with my priorities. These are not openings for negotiation. They are clear, weightless statements that provide no emotional handhold for the other person to grab. The moment you begin to justify, to over-explain, to list your reasons, you are no longer stating a boundary. You are inviting a debate. The goal is to exit the conversation respectfully, which often means exiting it quickly. A simple, "I need to go now," or "I've said all I can on this," allows you to step away without drama. You are not running from the conflict. You are simply choosing to leave the arena where the conflict is being manufactured. Be prepared, for this is when the true test arrives. The manipulator, confronted with this new unmovable you, will often react in predictable ways. They may feign hurt, hoping to lure you back into the familiar role of the comforter. They may escalate with anger, testing to see if your calm will crack under pressure. They may resort to guilt, painting your boundary as a personal betrayal. Your only task in this moment is to stay steady. See their reaction for what it is. A final, desperate tactic. Do not engage with the emotion. Do not apologize for holding your ground. Your steady, neutral presence in the face of their storm will be the most powerful statement you can make. It communicates that their emotional weather no longer dictates your climate. By saying no without malice or fear, you do not create conflict. You reveal the conflict that was already there, hidden beneath the surface of a one-sided agreement. And in that revelation, you claim the ultimate victory, the freedom to author your own choices. Chapter 13. Setting fair frames that invite cooperation. Every conversation comes with a frame, whether you place it there or not. And if you do not choose the frame, you will inevitably find yourself inside someone else's. The frame is the invisible context, the unspoken rules of engagement that dictate how words are interpreted and actions are understood. The manipulator thrives in the unframed space, where ambiguity allows them to shift meanings and redirect intentions to suit their hidden goals. To frame a conversation ethically is not to control the other person, but to create a shared reality so clear and fair that manipulation becomes impossible. It is the difference between stepping into a dimly lit room where shapes are ambiguous and threatening, and switching on the light to reveal the true, manageable space you are about to inhabit. This begins with a radical commitment to clarity. Before a discussion even begins, you can set the frame by stating its purpose simply. I'd like to talk about the project timeline to make sure we both have the same expectations, or I want to understand your perspective on this and then share mine so we can find a way forward. This is not a power move, it is an act of respect. It tells the other person, your time and mind are valuable, and I will not waste them with hidden agendas. I need to be honest that my budget is fixed. So while I'm very interested in your service, that's a key parameter for me. This disarms the potential for future manipulation around that very point. It removes the guesswork.
and prevents the other person from investing energy in a path that leads nowhere. When you are transparent, you build trust not by being a blank slate, but by being a readable map. This clarity and transparency naturally lead to the management of expectations. A fair frame outlines what a successful outcome looks like, and just as importantly, what is outside the bounds of the current discussion. It defines the playing field. This is how you reduce misunderstandings at their root. A misunderstanding is rarely about the words themselves. It is about the conflicting frames in which those words were spoken. A comment intended as a casual observation inside a frame of brainstorming can be taken as a harsh criticism inside a frame of final evaluation. When you establish a fair frame, you are not building a wall. You are building a bridge with clear guardrails. You are creating a container strong enough to hold disagreement without spilling into conflict. You invite cooperation because you have made the interaction safe. The other person does not have to be defensive because the rules are clear and apply to everyone. They can focus their energy on the problem, not on deciphering your intentions or protecting themselves from unseen threats. In doing so, you reclaim the architecture of your interactions. You move from being a participant, reacting to a hidden game, to being the co-creator of a space where only honest influence can flourish. Chapter 14. Negotiation without manipulation. The greatest leverage in any negotiation is not the power to make the other person say yes, but the quiet freedom to be perfectly willing to walk away. So much of what we call negotiation is merely a performance of pressure, a theater of manufactured urgency and veiled threats. This is not negotiation. It is the drama of mutual entrapment. True negotiation, the kind that builds rather than depletes, begins not with a tactic, but with a private, unshakable clarity about your own position. This is your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It is the clear-eyed answer to the question, what will I do if we cannot make a deal? This is not a plan B born of despair, but a source of immense inner strength. When you know with certainty that you have a viable path forward without this particular agreement, the entire dynamic shifts. You are no longer a supplicant. You become an explorer, jointly mapping a territory of potential mutual benefit. The manipulator loses power over you because they can no longer threaten you with the prospect of a collapsed deal. Your calm willingness to walk away is the most honest and powerful stance you can possibly hold. To negotiate from this place is to engage without pressure or deceit. It transforms the process from a battle of wills into a shared problem-solving session. The goal is no longer to defeat the other person, but to discover a solution that neither of you could have conceived alone. This begins by framing the conversation around interests, not positions. A position is a fixed demand. I need this price. An interest is the underlying need. I need to ensure this project remains profitable. When you discuss interests, you open up a universe of possibilities. Perhaps the price is fixed, but the payment terms can be extended. Perhaps the scope of work can be adjusted. You are no longer fighting over a single slice of pie. You are collaborating to find ways to make the pie larger. Consider a case where two departments are fighting over a limited budget. The frame of positions is a zero-sum game of winners and losers. But if they explore their interests, one may need the budget for a short-term launch, while the other needs it for long-term maintenance. A staggered release of funds, once discovered, satisfies both their true needs without requiring a victor and a vanquished. Or in a more personal sphere, a couple disagreeing on a vacation destination is locked in a battle of position. But by uncovering their interests, one seeks quiet solitude to recharge, the other craves cultural stimulation. They might discover a location that offers both a secluded retreat and a vibrant nearby town. The disagreement melts away, replaced by a collaborative search for a solution that honors both their deeper desires. This is the essence of negotiation without manipulation. It requires the courage to be transparent about your true interests and the genuine curiosity to uncover theirs.
It is a process of discovery, not conquest. In the end, you are not taking something from the other person. You are building a new shared agreement that is stronger and more resilient, because it rests on the solid ground of mutual benefit, not the shifting sands of pressure and fear.
Chapter 15. Offering value without hidden motives. The most influential gesture you can make is one that expects nothing in return. In a world of transactions, a genuine gift is a startling act of power.
We have been taught to see influence as a form of extraction, a clever means of getting what we want from others. But this is a fragile, short-sighted magic. It builds relationships on the brittle foundation of a future repayment, an invisible debt that strains and eventually snaps the connection. There is another way, a path less traveled, because it requires a different kind of strength, the strength to give without a guaranteed return. This is the power of authentic contribution. It is the act of offering value, a piece of knowledge, a moment of your time, a genuine connection, with no string attached, no silent ledger waiting to be balanced. This is not a tactic. It is a state of being. It is the teacher who shares wisdom for the sheer joy of seeing a mind awaken, not for the student's eternal gratitude. It is the leader who provides a resource without demanding loyalty in exchange. When you offer value in this way, you are not making a trade. You are building a monument to trust. The recipient of your gift, whether it is an idea or an act of service, feels the profound difference. They sense the absence of a hidden motive, the lack of a psychological hook. There is no subtle pressure to reciprocate, no unspoken expectation coloring their response. In that vacuum of obligation, something remarkable grows. Authentic trust. It is a trust that is not conditional on your next move, but is unconditional because of the purity of your last one. This is how honest value builds trust that is not transactional, but transformational. It creates a bond that is immune to the petty manipulations of quid pro quo, because it exists on a different plane entirely. This radical openness, this willingness to contribute without a contract, is what creates the most durable and potent form of influence, the influence that comes from respect. People are drawn to this authenticity like a compass to north. They know, at a level beyond conscious thought, your openness becomes a magnetic field, attracting opportunities and alliances that no amount of strategic maneuvering could ever secure. You are no longer seen as a manipulator to be wary of, but as a source of genuine value to be sought out.
This is the foundation of a true win-win dynamic, not the kind that is negotiated in a tense room with a list of demands, but the kind that emerges organically from a relationship built on mutual contribution. When both parties are focused on offering value, the entire interaction shifts from a finite game of winning and losing to an infinite game of creating more for everyone. The energy that was once spent on guarding against hidden motives is now freed for innovation and shared success. In the end, the greatest influence you can ever wield is not over others, but over the quality of the connections you form. And that quality is determined not by what you take, but by what you give, freely and without a secret price. Chapter 16. Influence in relationships. Love without pressure. The line between devotion and domination is often invisible, drawn not in ink, but in the silent language of sacrifice and expectation. In the realm of human connection, influence takes on its most potent and dangerous form. The very vulnerabilities we open in the name of love, our need to be cherished, our fear of abandonment, become the precise levers a manipulator will use to control the dance. This is where we must learn to discern the subtle, critical difference between healthy attraction and emotional manipulation.
Healthy attraction is a magnetic pull that celebrates the other's autonomy. It says, I am drawn to the person you are, and I want you to be free to be that person, even if that freedom sometimes leads you away from me. It is an invitation. Manipulation, disguised as love, is a force of possession.
It says, I am drawn to the person you are, and I will now begin to shape you into the person I need you to be for me. It is a cage built from the raw materials of your own affection. The most common tools in this construction are guilt traps.
These are the subtle emotional landmines laid in the path of everyday interaction. The sigh that implies your independent choice has caused deep hurt. The "after all I've done for you" that hangs in the air following a simple disagreement. The withdrawal of affection that punishes a boundary. These tactics work because they pervert the natural desire to care for someone into a compulsive need to appease them. You are no longer acting from love, but from a fear of causing disappointment or loss. The relationship ceases to be a source of nourishment and becomes a system of emotional accounting. A constant calculation of debts and payments. To build a different kind of connection requires a different set of communication habits, ones designed to build trust rather than test it. This begins with replacing accusation with curiosity. Instead of, you never listen, the shift is to, I feel unheard when this happens, and I want to understand your perspective. This simple reframe transforms a battlefield into a bridge. It is the habit of stating your own needs clearly, without demanding they be met, and of listening to your partner's needs without hearing them as an attack on your own character. This fosters a space where both people can be vulnerable without feeling weaponized. The ultimate expression of this is the delicate essential balance between closeness and autonomy. A healthy relationship is not the fusion of two people into one blurred entity, but the conscious choice of two complete individuals to stand beside one another. It is the understanding that your partner's time alone, their separate friendships, and their independent dreams are not a threat to your bond, but the very things that keep it vibrant and alive. You are not each other's source of life, but fellow travelers sharing the journey. In this space, influence is not a tool of control, but a natural consequence of respect. Your opinion holds weight not because you will punish disagreement, but because you have proven yourself to be a safe and honest harbor. Love, when stripped of pressure and manipulation, becomes the one influence that asks for nothing, and in doing so, receives everything.
Chapter 17. Influence in Work and Leadership. True authority is granted willingly by those who follow. Control is taken from those who are compelled. The modern workplace is the stage where this difference plays out every single day.
The landscape of your professional life is a dense forest of hidden influences, where the currency is not always money, but credibility, opportunity, and power. Many believe that to lead is to command, to exert one's will upon others through the sheer force of personality or the threat of consequence. This is not leadership. It is a form of psychological siege, and it builds followers who are compliant, but never truly committed. Leadership, in its purest form, is an exercise in clarity and fairness. It is the ability to paint a vision so compelling that others choose to walk toward it of their own volition. It is the consistency of applying rules without favoritism, creating an environment where trust can flourish because people know what to expect. This leader does not need to manipulate, because they have mastered the art of inspiration. But you will not be alone in this environment. You will encounter the manipulative colleague, the one who trades not in work but in influence. They are the ones who manage up brilliantly while managing down destructively. You will know them by their fingerprints, the credit they subtly take for collective work, the strategic pieces of misinformation they spread as concern, the deadlines they create to manufacture a crisis that only they can resolve. They are masters of the passive-aggressive question designed to undermine and the false alliance that seeks to enlist you in their private wars.
To spot them is to disarm them. Their power depends on your reaction, your anger, your defensiveness, your engagement in their drama. Your only defense is to stay steady. This means refusing to be drawn into the emotional whirlpool of office politics. When gossip is offered, do not receive it. When a hidden accusation is made, address it with calm, clarifying questions in the light of day. I want to make sure I understand. Can you be more specific about your concern? Your steadiness, your unwavering focus on the work itself, and the clear stated goals of the organization becomes a shield. The chaotic energy of manipulation will break against it. Because you provide no resistance, no drama, no fuel, you become an uninteresting target, a stone in the river that the current simply flows around. This is how you create influence without force. You do not demand respect. You cultivate it through relentless competence and unshakable integrity. You become the person whose word is bond, whose analysis is sound, whose motives are transparent. People are drawn to this reliability. They begin to seek your counsel, to value your opinion, to trust your judgment. Your influence grows not because you have taken it from someone else, but because you have built it within yourself and offered it as a resource to others. You lead from where you are, not by pulling strings, but by being a pillar that others can rely upon to build something greater than themselves. In the end, the most powerful leader is not the loudest voice in the room, but the one who makes it safe for every other voice to be heard. Chapter 18. Influence in the Digital Age. You are not the user, you are the used. Every click, every pause, every scroll is a confession meticulously recorded in the silent ledger of the digital realm. The modern world of influence has migrated to a new, ethereal ecosystem, one that lives in the air and in the palm of your hand. Here, influence is not merely a human art, but an industrial process, automated and scaled to an unimaginable degree. This is the world of targeted ads and algorithms, a world built on a single, profound insight, that you can be known better by your patterns of attention than by your own conscious thought. These systems learn the rhythm of your desires, your fears, and your insecurities, and they feed you a curated illusion of reality designed to elicit a specific response. A purchase, a vote, an addiction. Your feed is not a window to the world. It is a carefully constructed funhouse mirror, reflecting a version of existence that is tailored to keep you engaged, and more importantly, persuadable. This environment naturally cultivates one of the most potent psychological traps, the social media comparison trap. You are constantly presented with a highlight reel of perfected lives, curated successes, and manufactured happiness. This relentless exposure creates a background hum of inadequacy, a quiet voice that whispers you are not enough as you are. This feeling of lack is the perfect opening for influence. It makes you susceptible to the product that promises transformation, the guru who sells the secret, the lifestyle that seems just one purchase away. This is the core of the distinction between online persuasion and manipulation. Ethical persuasion online might be a transparent advertisement for a useful tool. Manipulation is the entire architecture. The algorithm, the dark patterns, the curated envy, working in concert to create a sense of lack within you, and then positioning itself as the only solution. To navigate this new world, you must develop a new form of hygiene, not for the body, but for the mind. Digital hygiene is the practice of consciously cleaning and curating your informational diet. It begins with the simple revolutionary act of curation. Who and what do you allow to speak into your life daily? Unfollow accounts that trigger anxiety or envy. Mute topics that fuel outrage. This is not avoidance. It is the strategic defense of your mental real estate. The second practice is scheduled disconnection. Designate periods where you are truly offline, not just physically, but mentally. This creates the necessary space for your own thoughts to re-emerge, for your own desires to surface without the constant suggestion of the algorithm. Finally, cultivate a posture of active skepticism.
When you feel a strong emotional pull, a sudden need, a rising anger, a sharp envy, pause and ask, what is this emotion designed to make me do? This simple question re-establishes you as the observer of your own digital experience, not merely its subject. You begin to see the strings, not as fate, but as choices made by designers in a room far away. And in that seeing, you reclaim the one thing the digital age seeks to commodify, your own autonomous attention. Chapter 19. From Reaction to Choice, Reclaiming Your Agency. You have been practicing a script you did not write, performing in a play whose director remains unseen. Your freedom begins the moment you realize the script is not your soul. Until now, much of your life has been a series of sophisticated reactions. An external event, a criticism, a demand, a tantalizing offer, triggers an internal state, anger, fear, desire, which in turn compels an immediate, almost automatic behavior. This is the well-worn path of the reactive mind, a neural superhighway built for speed, not for destination. To reclaim your agency is to undertake the most profound renovation of your inner world. To move from being a passenger on this highway to becoming the architect of your own crossroads. This is the shift from emotional impulse to conscious decision. It is not the suppression of emotion, but the insertion of a single critical moment between the feeling and the action. In that moment, choice is born. This space is the sacred ground of your autonomy. It is the quiet realization that the urgent email does not require an immediate heated reply. The provoking comment does not demand a defensive retort. The flash of envy does not need to be converted into an impulsive purchase. These reactions are merely old programs, wired into your system for efficiency, running on the outdated software of past experiences and survival instincts. The manipulator, the advertiser, the provocateur, they all depend on these programs running without interruption. Their entire craft is built on predicting your next, inevitable move. To rewire these automatic responses is to break their power at its source. It is to introduce a bug into their system, a glorious malfunction called awareness. The practice is deceptively simple, yet it requires the patience of a gardener tending to a new seed. It is the conscious decision to slow down your thinking in real time. When you feel the familiar surge of a reactive emotion, your first and only task is to breathe into the space it creates. You do not need to analyze it, judge it, or even understand it. You simply need to acknowledge its presence. A quiet internal whisper, "This is anger," or "This is pressure," is enough. This act of naming creates a tiny fissure in the solid wall of the reaction. You are no longer the anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. From this new vantage point, you can ask a different kind of question. Not how do I express this, but what do I truly want to do with this? The answer will rarely be the reflexive one. It might be to pause. It might be to ask a clarifying question. It might be to simply walk away and let the emotion metabolize on its own. This is how you reclaim your agency. Not through grand sweeping gestures, but through 1,000 small deliberate choices made in the space between the trigger and the response. You are no longer a reaction waiting to happen. You are a choice, continuously unfolding. Chapter 20. The Velistra Mindset. Clarity, calm, responsibility. The final secret is that there is no secret. There is only a way of seeing, a way of being, that transforms the world from a place of being influenced to a place of conscious choice. Everything we have explored, the anchors, the triggers, the manipulations, were merely maps of the territory. But the territory itself is your mind. The Velistra mindset is not a collection of techniques to be used, but a state of being to be inhabited. It is a triad of powers that, when woven together, form an unassailable foundation: clarity, calm, and responsibility.
This begins with the daily, quiet habits that build lasting awareness. It is the morning moment you take not to check a device, but to check your own intentions for the day. It is the conscious breath you draw before answering a difficult question. It is the evening reflection where you note, without judgment, where you... These are not grand gestures, but the subtle repetitions that carve new pathways in the mind, turning awareness from a concept into a reflex. This cultivated clarity becomes the lens through which you see everything. It improves your relationships because you no longer react to the drama, but to the person behind it. You hear the unspoken need in a loved one's criticism. You see the insecurity driving a colleague's aggression. Your decisions become more precise because you are no longer choosing based on a manipulated sense of scarcity or urgency, but on a clear assessment of value and alignment with your purpose. The chaotic noise of influence fades into the background, and the steady signal of what is true and important emerges with stunning definition. And with this clarity comes a natural, unshakable calm. This is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. It is the deep, still water beneath the stormy surface of daily life. When you are calm, you are complete. You cannot be rushed because you have reclaimed your time. You cannot be flattered because you have rooted your self-worth in your own assessment. You cannot be guilted because you alone are the judge of your own integrity. This calm is a fortress that requires no walls, for it is built on the understanding that no one can truly influence you without your silent, willing cooperation. This understanding leads to the final and most powerful pillar: responsibility. This is not the burden of blame, but the quiet strength of authorship. It is the radical acceptance that your life, your reactions, and your choices are ultimately your own. You stop assigning your emotional state to the actions of others. No one makes you feel anything, they merely play a note, and you are the one who decides if it will resonate within you. To accept this responsibility is the ultimate liberation. It means the power to change your experience of the world has always been, and will always be, in your hands. Velistra is not a book to be finished, but a practice to be lived. It is the continuous, gentle return to this mindset, to the clarity that sees, the calm that endures, and the responsibility that empowers. You close the book, but you open your eyes, and you begin, not as a student, but as a master of your own hidden world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to Audiobook Vision. Hit the like button to keep this work. Share it with someone who's ready to create rather than perform. And let me know in the comments which chapter touched your heart.